Welcome everyone to today's interview on the Plant Remedy Revolution. Today we are speaking with Erin Boardman-Wathen, who is a health coach, but not just any health coach, so stick with me here for a minute. Erin grew up in your kind of typical beach town, California, was always an active kid. She was on numerous sports teams and taught aerobics in college. She ran half marathons, did Tough Mudders, did tons of spin rides for charity, so has always been very active. However, with all of this knowledge and exercise, she still wasn't finding complete peace with her body, right? Even after graduating from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, she's a certified food addiction counselor, spinning instructor, yoga instructor, etc., she was still finding herself in this yo-yo situation with her body. And Erin discovered nutrition to be that missing piece. Okay, right? This is nothing new to a lot of us. However, I think we can all relate to the fact that, trying different diets and yet never really reaching that goal weight, right? Kind of either ping-ponging back and forth or, just never getting to where we really wanted to be. So Erin took it upon herself to write a book called Why Can't I Stick to My Diet? How to End the Food Drama. And you can pick this book up, pretty much anywhere. And her philosophy, really simply put, is health isn't a number on the scale, right? And it's not how often we exercise, but our lives as a whole. And together, with people who work with Erin, find a true solution that fits into their specific lifestyle. So Erin's got some great tips and some very strong opinions on what works and what doesn't. And I'm really excited to bring Erin to the show today. So hi, Erin. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I'd love if you would just kind of give a little introduction to our listeners about, I gave them a little bit about who you are, but how did you find yourself on this path in your own words?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I, like a lot of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s, always was aware of, dieting and fat-free food and Jane Fonda. But as I got older and older, I realized that I was always exercising and always dieting, and yet I wasn't ever at the weight that I wanted to for long. I couldn't really live there for long. And it seemed to be harder and harder with each passing year. And I felt like I was just becoming more and more obsessed with food. Like I spent so much of my brain power, like obsessed with or preoccupied with how much I ate or how much I wasn't going to eat or how much I was going to exercise, if I could be skinny by Friday. And it became just so overwhelming and just, it was like a full-time job, just, the thoughts in my head. And it wasn't until I really was honest with myself about A, what I was eating, and B, what was behind what I was eating, that I was able to find any sort of peace with any of it. Mm-hmm. And the irony is about all of it is that we have spent so much time thinking about, like, is keto better than Atkins, better than intermittent fasting, better than, fill in the blank, next fad diet, when all of that stuff, for the most part, healthy eating is healthy eating. That stuff really hasn't changed over the last, 50 or 60 years. Vegetables have always been in style, right? Mm-hmm. Processed food is just this new horrible thing we've done to ourselves. The problem is what's behind the food that we're hiding with, the emotional attachment to the food. That's why we have people, or maybe even ourselves, where we keep gaining and losing and gaining and losing because we never really unattached to the food at an emotional level. Like the emotional eating never stops because we're never really willing to sit in that discomfort of the bad feeling. Even if it's something as simple as your sister's annoying you, and instead of just really feeling how annoying your sister is, you eat a bag of cookies. Well, maybe a bag of cookies, well, first of all, it distracts you, like time-wise, it distracts you. And then you have a problem that you're more comfortable with, you're more familiar with it. Then you have all the calories you have to undo. Then you have the stomach ache. Then you can feel guilty about that. You have all these other things, right? Meanwhile, your sister annoying you because mom likes her best, or whatever the other situation you're avoiding is not being addressed because you're so busy with gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, that the stuff that really needs to be looked at, the things that's really, truly bothering you, just keeps going on and on and on. So in some ways, we're hiding with our weight. Like, the weight is serving a purpose. And until we're willing to really take a cold, hard look at what, even like a 5 or 10 pounds, doesn't have to be something huge, enough that it kind of, takes your confidence away, or gets in between you and, asking for the promotion at work, or, setting some healthy boundaries with friends or your partner or whatever. That's enough. If the way you eat is getting in the way of anything in your life, you need to address it, because it's just food. It is just food. I mean, we need to eat it to survive. It doesn't need to be a hindrance.
Mm-hmm.
But things have gotten really screwed up, and I'm just trying to get everybody to prioritize food where it should be. It should be fuel,
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly.
Right.
It's enjoyable. I'm not saying we eat pellets like, chickens or something, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to eat the worst food, but it shouldn't be, the best time of your day is eating. It should be the people you're with. So things have gotten screwed up, and let's just put things back to where they should have always been. That's what I'm trying to work towards.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I hear a lot that, in America, right, like, we have so much food, right? And these types of situations that people run into, food addictions and hiding with food, it's just not really an option in food insecure places, right? I'm not saying that these people don't have other issues. A lot of times they're much more survival based, but the focus on food, at least from what I mean, I could be totally wrong, but that's just my sense. It's like we have so much abundance here that it's like, sure, why not turn that into a problem as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think, we're countries where, the UN is making famine relief drops. You're going to have a lot of Overeaters Anonymous meetings.
Right.
But as far as, the current Western culture where we don't have a lot of scarcity, we have other issues that we've created for ourselves. And a lot of them seems to be surrounding our emotional attachment to food, which is also, intertwined with weight and size and all these other things. But I agree, like, it is kind of like, on one hand, it's an abundance problem, but it's a problem nonetheless. And it's also truly impacting a lot of people's mental health in how they feel about themselves, how they value themselves, and how much life they're able to live because of just the constant anxiety they're feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everybody needs to be quote unquote skinny. It's just, let's just, refile food to where it should be. And for a lot of us, it's all the messages we got when we were young kids, young girls. And, I have a 12-year-old daughter now, so I see stuff that she's hearing, and I try so hard not to say anything at home, but I mean, I can't keep her in a bubble, right? It just gets through, it's society, right? It just comes through. So something that we should all be aware of, and just kind of evaluate with ourselves, because if you're aware of it, then you can help yourself or even help someone else with it.
Sure. I mean, and I think too, at least what I've noticed is like we're bombarded with so much information. I mean, I've really found it pretty serendipitous that when you and I first connected on the phone last week, it was like I literally had just come from the grocery store and was near to a panic attack because It's like I'm bombarded with all these colors, all this advertising. I want to focus and eat healthy and give my family healthy foods. And yet I'm getting text messages from my 14-year-old son who's like, can you pick up Pizza Pockets? I hear they're really good. And I'm like, I don't want to give him food issues, but I don't want him to eat that stuff. And I'm just, all the information that I have, from gluten-free to no soy to, no artificial colors to, some pesticides, okay, your body can handle it. Like, it was the perfect storm in that moment. And yeah, it was just really interesting to then come home and be like, hi, Erin, and have that conversation. Because a lot of it is like, there's so much information. There's so many fad diets. There's so many things that you hear being good or not good as far as eating and your body, that it becomes a little paralyzing, right? Like, how do you deal with that in your life?
Well, I think the easiest way I can explain it or just manage it for my own family is just be very aware that there's so much money on the line. Pizza Pockets and the pesticide people, and there's so much money. And a lot of it is to confuse you. I mean, that's what a lot of the tobacco internal memos from back in the 60s, they had something they used where they intentionally confused everyone, where if you ever watch Mad Men, if you remember, they had doctors endorsing cigarettes in the beginning.
Right.
And it was so people could rationalize smoking, even though it kind of felt weird to them and a little bit off-putting, but they had doctors endorsing it. So there was just enough gray so people could rationalize smoking, right? So I feel that's the way people are about junk food. There's just enough gray when they say things like, well, I don't want to deprive myself, or it's all about balance, or everybody cheats now and then. I'm thinking, do you really think it's a good idea to eat some color not naturally found in nature? I mean, honestly. But, ignorance is bliss sometimes. I was just at Disney World over the weekend, which is frightening all unto itself. And, obviously it's a very different segment of America than I usually do. And I don't think most people, if I was to poll them, in line for Space Mountain or whatever, are lazy or bad or anything. I just think they're doing the best they can. And also, they don't always necessarily have the amount of time or the inclination to really read everything. Like last summer, that movie, What the Health, I think came out. Was that what it's called?
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
It was a movie. It was on Netflix, and it was basically about how the big problem is processed meat, like cold cuts.
Right.
Cold cuts
did this come after
yeah.
Cowspiracy? It was like the sequel to that, right? Okay.
Every summer there seems to be some sort of food conspiracy movie. So I actually blogged about it, and it got picked up by somebody, I forget who it was. And I actually wrote about what it's like to be a health coach in the day of all these conspiracy movies, because right away people are like, my kids are going vegan, they're never eating meat again. And so in about 10 minutes, I just in my home computer was able to find out who financed the movie. Because I was very suspicious that every single person the guy interviewed, every single doctor I knew to be an avowed vegan, right? So he wasn't just randomly asking doctors. He was asking doctors he knew that were vegans, which is fine. Like, nothing wrong with being a vegan. But he was shooting fish in a barrel, essentially. Well, vegan fish. So his self-selected population of people. And then after doing, like I said, research on my own computer without any special access, the movie was funded by the Sugar Council. Because a year or two earlier, Katie Couric came out with a movie called Fed Up, where she said the biggest source of disease is sugar. So it's very confusing if you're just a regular old non-health industry person just living your life, right? So for you and I, who have more time, more invested, we can talk on a deeper level. But if you're just trying to go to the grocery store to feed your family, you just want to be in and out of there in 20 minutes. So the thing that I like to tell people is like basic good nutrition never goes out of style. It's sort of like if you think of like the classics, like with clothes, right? Like jeans, white t-shirts, pencil skirts, right? So vegetables, high quality protein, you know, water, those things. You know, everything else is really like just a bunch of fads, like, you know, keto or, you know, anything super over the top, extremes. Be very wary of those. Those are trends. But as far as the basics when it comes to like vegetables and, you know, not gorging yourself and, you know, not eating all day and not eating too close to bed and, you know, drinking more water than any other sort of liquid, like those sort of basic things like your grandparents did, those, you can always kind of count on those like classic ideas while, you know, fat-free, all fat, you know, all protein, no carb, all that sort of extreme stuff, that's just noise. And I think when we get super preoccupied with, you know, well, how many rat hairs can the ketchup have, we're missing the point. Ketchup is a boatload of sugar. So let's try and get your kids not to have as much ketchup. So, you know, or a better quality of ketchup, or maybe, you know, cut the ketchup with tomato sauce. So eventually after 6 months, it's mostly tomato sauce and not solely ketchup. So also when we expect to change everything overnight, of course the kids are going to freak out. I remember one time a couple years ago, I made my kids like black bean brownies, and everything was fine until my husband told them what it was, because they had no idea. They thought it was just like, you know. But later my daughter's like, I knew something was weird because you gave us brownies out of the blue. I'm like, oh yeah, that probably alerted you. But
oh my God, but that happened to me too. Just the other day, my son wanted chocolate. And instead of like,
yeah, like what's going on, Mom? But I think that, you know, we don't have to change everything all at once because that sort of change never works with ourselves or, you know, people in our lives. But just change, you know, the things that are easiest and the things that are biggest. You know, like if your kids don't care about something, then, you know, if they could take it or leave it, then don't buy it anymore. You know, or if there's something that's really causing a lot of damage, like if your kids are huge soda drinkers, then maybe that needs to go. You need to find a way to cut back ASAP. But, you know, sometimes I hear from moms who are really preoccupied with, you know, not making their kids unhappy. I'm like, well, why do you think your kid should be happy all the time?
I know. I certainly wasn't.
I mean, my mother didn't stay up at night worrying about that one.
Right.
But part of me is thinking, well, maybe the problem is your kid you always made him happy with soda for 10 years. So if with our kids, you know, sure, if we never, ever, ever let our kids have soda and then they go to college and there's soda, that's probably not going to go over well. But if they have soda on vacation once or twice a year, sure. But let's not overcorrect and have soda every day. So let's be reasonable and, you know, let's be the parents and not the, you know, the friends, and realize that it's okay to say no. Like that's the thing I don't get sometimes. Sometimes with my friends and even my clients is like they tell me these stories and I just like shake my head. I'm like, wait, you know, your kids did what? Or, you know, one of the ones I hear a lot is my kids are vegetarians and they won't eat vegetables. That's one of my favorites.
Right.
So I'm like, so what do your kids eat? Oh, just cheese pizza. I'm like, there's no vegetables in cheese pizza. Well, they won't eat meat. I'm like, well, you know, cheese pizza is just fast-acting carbohydrates and really dense calorically fat, right? There's very little protein.
I
know. You know, we edamame on that, or, you know, we could talk, you know, heck, almond butter, a soup of almond butter afterwards. But, you know, and then the next thing you know, their kid has a serious weight problem because they're never satisfied, they're never satiated because all they've been eating is macaroni and cheese pizza, and quesadillas their whole life. So, and then when I asked them, well, why did this come about? Like, so what exactly happened? And they don't really know, and I'm not judging their parenting, but it's one of those things where, you could have introduced edamame or tempeh or, I don't know, something to at least, put something green on the plate.
Sure.
But, at 20, it's sort of hard to all of a sudden do much with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very true. And like you said, we're all doing the best we can. And also it's, a lot of us are working full-time jobs, running our kids around. You get home and no one has time to, spend hours in the kitchen cooking up this really fresh, organic, farm to table meal 3 times a day, right? So it's like, that's where I find the challenge. It's like, all right, I'm trying to find that balance where I'm eating and feeding my family healthy, and at the same time respecting the fact that, like, a lot of times we're starving by the time we get home. And if I haven't prepared well, it's a scramble around the kitchen to try to put something together, right? Do you have any simple tips there?
I always think with that one, it's like planning ahead is key. Even if it's always having, like we eat meat in my household, like, so I always have a rotisserie chicken in the fridge. We always have, I'm a big, like, my kids grew up on edamame, like I'll throw edamame in, some black bean pasta and like throw in some cheese, and that's, some days that and like some salads is good as it's gonna be, right? Is it the best? No. Is it got most of the basics in it? Yeah.
Yeah. So you think just like keeping your pantries properly stocked, first of all.
And also, like, there's also, people are really, really afraid of having things in cans and the frozen section. Like, I don't consider that to really be the worst thing in the world if you have, a bunch of like the frozen stuff from Trader Joe's. Like, in a pinch, it's better than pizza. Because, should it be the staple of your life? Not at all. I'm not a fan of, the true processed stuff, but, life happens. So let's do the best we can. So if there's 10 things that I always know that I need, I keep a list on my phone. So when I'm in the grocery store, I like 10 because then you can go to the quick aisle at the grocery store, the, express lane, rotisserie chicken, spinach, milk, or whatever 10 things your family needs to get from big shopping trip to big shopping trip. Know what it is. You can be in and out. And, it should change depending on the seasons as well. But at least it can get you, apples. You can use apples and almond butter for a quick breakfast in the morning or whatever. Just some basics, because if you have protein and fat when you eat and fiber, it'll stay with you longer. And so that's what I've gotten my kids to do. Would they prefer if I still bought Skippy? Absolutely. Am I going to? No. But but it isn't like they're going to ride their bike to the store and go buy Skippy. I mean, they're going to use the almond butter I have in the fridge. I have in the pantry. So we do have some influence. I do think that we need to be realistic that there will be a day in which our kids will be able to go to the store or the dorm or summer camp or wherever and make their own choices. So we need to understand that they might not eat exactly how we want them initially, but, they should do the basics, like try to have some vegetables on their plate. That's not like a pea pod if you're my son. But it's to not make a huge, standoff every meal, that kind of thing. So I think it's, it's, we try to keep it in place. But as far as like, the dreaded, everyone's starving at 6:30 and you're going to eat whatever, like the Tasmanian devil, there are some things you can do. On Sundays, there are all those like meal prep guides you see on Pinterest and stuff. A lot of that is like, how much do you really want to do on Sunday afternoons? I always think about. But there are a lot of things, if you want to do a lot of prep ahead of time, you can. Or if you just want to have like some go-tos, like, just, 10 things you can do with rotisserie chicken, or
Right.
kale, or, just real basic stuff like, broccoli and like a sweet potato and fish, like you got just really basic stuff. But sometimes it's just Tuesday night dinner,
Mm-hmm.
You need to eat after soccer before homework, and it's not going to be necessarily something, out of a cooking show, but that's okay if that's just how life is.
Yeah.
And I'm also not a huge fan of when people put a lot of pressure on themselves, everything's needs to be perfect, because it's not going to be. So like, don't even worry about it.
No, I really appreciate what you're saying, and even the bit with the frozen veggies, right? Like I've heard that if you can't get them fresh, like picked pretty recently, then frozen can actually be better.
Sometimes. Absolutely, it can't. I mean, ideally, you go to the farmer's market and you talk to the person who, like, picked it that morning and came in a truck that's, solar powered or whatever. But, in reality, maybe you had to pick up some frozen stuff in the grocery store. And, it's like frozen is better than canned, and canned is better than processed. So, you do your best, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need to not have an all or nothing attitude. So if your kid has, or you have, some frozen broccoli instead of real broccoli, but it's still broccoli, it's still better than corn dogs.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Something was popping into my head the other day. Michael Pollan, who wrote all these amazing books, right? When he was asked, like, oh, like, how should we eat and what's the best way? I think he said something very simple, which was eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Like, that's his whole philosophy.
I agree.
Right? It's like, oh, right. And I love how you put it that, like, healthy eating doesn't go out of style, right? It's not like the latest trend or the latest fad of like platform boots and, Atkins diet. It's like, no, it's still vegetables, high quality protein, fruits, fibers, right?
Don't gorge yourself. Don't eat all day.
Yeah.
Don't go to bed. I mean, I think if you think of it almost like classics, like a wardrobe even, or capsule wardrobe, whatever you want to think, and that like the basics don't go out of style. Like, having a lot of vegetables and a lot of quality in your food isn't ever bad. I mean, when I think of all of the, because the fad cookbooks and the fad diet books, because I have tons of cookbooks that, most of them, I think of them as aspirational, quite frankly. I look at the pretty pictures. And so many of them are like, the paleo this or the keto this or the blah, 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 that. And, I mean, I don't even think most people even use cookbooks, honestly, on a daily basis. I think a lot of people, if they're going to do recipe, then they go online. But people still buy cookbooks. I think they just like to look at them. But of the cookbooks, I think that, the stuff that most people make on a daily basis and, kitchens across America, I think it's pretty basic for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people are doing really fancy things. I think they're just trying, 5 ingredients or less kind of proteins. I don't think it's super fancy stuff. Because everyone is so busy. And, of course, there's always the outlier people, but, maybe on Sundays they might make a roast or something fancy, but day in and day out, I don't have that kind of time, and even when I did, my kids wouldn't eat it because it looked funny or whatever.
Right. It's so true.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, it's a really hard one because you want your kids to like it, but you also don't want it to be the biggest deal in the world. So to find that balance is it's sort of a dance.
It is. And, I just want to honor too that we're talking about our kids a lot because we're both working moms, but this applies to everyone, right? Like after a long day at the office or you commute a lot or whatever it is, that there's ways to kind of adopt this into your diet. If you're, excuse me, a road warrior and you're driving a lot because you're doing sales or something, you still have the option to maybe pop into Whole Foods, grab your, a plate of like Brussels sprouts and roast chicken and, some cauliflower and be like, okay, fuel. I'm not going to run necessarily to the ice cream aisle and get a quick fix.
Absolutely.
Speaking of that though, is ice cream okay on occasion? Can we do that still?
I'm not lactose intolerant, so it's not really my scene.
Mm-hmm.
If you like it and you can tolerate it, and it's what you have a small amount of it. If you're going to have it, I recommend you have it after a meal. Ideally it's like lunch. So metabolizes better and digests better.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think dairy is really that good for us, even if you can digest it. It's the modern dairy especially has got so much stuff in it, even if you get the best quality. But I know a lot of people have a lot of very good memories of, getting ice cream and such. So I don't want to mess with that one.
Right. That's totally fair. I totally get it. We can bring that into any other topic, I guess, like whatever your treat is. Like you said, there's probably a hack such as putting black beans in your brownies.
I also think sometimes like if all you do is like give people kind of super hacky stuff, they just get mad. So sometimes if you give them like the real stuff and they know it, that can kind of take the edge off. You know what I mean? Like if you know something is a fake or a phony,
right?
Like where's the real stuff? So I think with food, like there's always these there's tons and tons of cookbooks and websites. It's like baking with stevia, for example, and people always want to know like. This happened a lot around Christmas. I get phone calls from, it was usually like my friends, my daughter's friends' moms, who were like, hey, so I'm going to make, my mom's famous raspberry Danish. I'm like, okay. They're like, but I know you said that sugar's bad, so I'm going to put in stevia instead. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be horrible. Then they're telling me they're going to use almond flour instead of white flour. Then they're going to use, applesauce instead of eggs because their husband's cholesterol. And then so at the end of it, I said, look, you're not going to have what your mom used to make. You're going to have something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you have what your mom used to make and you have less of it, or maybe you just go in a whole other direction. But if you start substituting stuff, thinking you're going to have what mom used to make, you're going to be one upset lady. So
yeah, no, it's a really good point.
And also, I used to work at a really nice hotel, not in the bakery department, by the way. And I remember I went to the bakery, the pastry chef, and I was telling her how my cookies weren't working. And she's like, well, what are you doing to them? I said, I'm using, soy butter and, whole wheat flour. And I could tell she was so aggravated. She said, well, in baking, everything is formulated for the recipe that it's made for, meaning like use real butter and real flour or else you're going to get the huge nasty mess that you are making. And I always think of that when I see all of these, sugar-free lady cookbooks or whatever, in which what I've done, and I'm not saying it's the best, but I found it to be a lot easier way to live, is to just stop trying to find the workarounds, just try to find other things I like to eat. Like instead of, a sugar-free sorbet, I'll have like berries, that kind of thing. Like,
sure.
Because and some people think that's, you know, a fate worse than death or whatever. It works for me because if I had the sorbet or the sugar, it was just too close to real, but not really real. So I just had to sort of just leave that whole world behind in order to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And you found something else that worked for you, and it doesn't have to work for everyone, but I feel that. I get that. It's like having, I mean, you're lactose intolerant, so you can let me know what you feel about those, but like it's like the cashew cheese or the fake cheese,
Yeah.
I find is like more processed than.
Oh, it totally is.
Right, it's like all different like hydrogenated oils and this flavor and that. Like, yeah, it's vegan, but why not just not have the cheese then?
Yeah. It's like, have you ever seen like the vegan like sausage? It has like 95 ingredients in the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like, yeah, it might not be made of meat, but it's made of something. It's like a tofurkey or just, ugh. Yeah, it's just sort of like, let's just go in another direction. But people don't really like that kind of all or nothing. They kind of want their cake and eat it too, you know, no pun intended.
Yeah.
So people don't really necessarily want to hear that right off the bat, that kind of thinking is a bit too much. So initially, you know, sometimes people will still have ice cream and I don't want to make a big deal about it because if they're willing to like do all the other stuff, it's not the hugest deal.
Yeah.
Because it's not always about the ice cream. It's usually about like the feelings they're suppressing with the ice cream. That's actually the problem.
Totally. No, and that actually brings us like full circle back to where we started the interview, and that is people, you know, tend to yo-yo a lot with diets and are searching for that eternal solution because feeling the feelings that we feel can be really uncomfortable. And that's something that you specialize in. And so I just want to let all of our listeners know about your really generous free gift, which is if you go to Erin's website, which is EW Wellness Solutions, all one word, ewwellnesssolutions.com, you can contact Erin for a consult. And just mention the code Plant Remedy Revolution, which is where you found her. And I will let you know, Erin's pretty picky about her clientele, only because she really wants to work with people who are ready to dive in and look at the hard stuff and really commit to doing the work. And again, I think you'll agree her approach is pretty simple. Doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. Did I get that right, Erin?
Perfectly said. Thank you.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Well, let's wrap up here. And I just want to thank you so much again for being on the show today. It's Erin at ErinWathenWellnessSolutions.com. I'm going to say that again. It's Erin Wathen or EWWellnessSolutions.com. Thank you again, Erin. You're a wealth of knowledge, and it's been a real pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you as well.